I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsibly. I would strongly support them doing that. The most are the people who are the leaders in these various sports. And it's just not right. This is Jim Crow on steroids, what they're doing in Georgia.
President Biden yesterday saying he would back a decision to move the MLB All-Star Game out of Atlanta in response to new legislation that tightens voting laws in Georgia. Georgia businesses feeling the pressure from voting rights activists are now speaking out against the state's new voting law. Coca-Cola CEO James Quincy called the legislation wrong and unacceptable and step backward. And Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian wrote in a memo to employees, quote, "The entire rationale for this bill was based on a lie that there was widespread voter fraud in Georgia in the 2020 elections. This is simply not true." Governor Brian Kemp defended the law in an interview yesterday.
I understand that they have public companies and they have boards that are pressuring them, but that still doesn't change the truth and the fact that this bill expands voting access, especially on the weekends in Georgia. It uses a voter ID, which is free, for absentee ballot with mail that'll speed up the process. It requires county elections officials to continuously tabulate to get every vote counted, and it's a secure, accessible, fair way to do it.
I love the voter ID, but a lot of Republicans are against vaccine passports. Yep. Our next two guests have been stepping up the pressure before some of those companies began to speak out. Joining us now, former general counsel and senior vice president of labor relations communications for UPS, Teri McClure. Also with us, senior associate dean at the Yale School of Management, Jeff Sonnenfeld. Their recent opinion piece for Newsweek is entitled, "As Georgia Goes, So Goes the Nation." It reads in part this: "Many of the CEOs of these enterprises are our personal friends. However, even friends can use candid advice from other friends. Could our Georgian business leader friends become too cautious, if not even over-lawyered? At the very least, UPS should have done more to simply educate their employees and encourage them and stakeholders to speak out. The right to fair elections is so fundamental to our society and our democracy that every company should have been willing to speak up. How could these CEOs mute their voices as the GOP-controlled legislature to overrule local election boards reduced 33 ballot drop boxes to 9 and denied water to people in long lines? Both Google and Microsoft recently announced new regional offices in Atlanta. Perhaps it's time for their workforce to demand reconsideration of such corporate moves. Teri, how far should these companies go? You being affiliated with one of these big companies, it's one thing to say something. It is much another thing to put your money where your mouth is.
Absolutely, Mika, and thank you for inviting me to participate. You know, I think I've been in the room when those decisions are being evaluated by businesses, whether or not to speak out on these issues. And it is a difficult decision to make. But I firmly believe that this is an issue of democracy. This is an issue that goes to the heart of capitalism, and that's so very important for businesses to maintain. It's been politicized, and that's unfortunate. But voting rights is not truly a political issue. It's a bipartisan issue. So, yes, I think it is important for companies to speak out. And it is important for them to speak out not just on their own behalf, but to help educate their employees. You know, UPS was involved, as many other companies were involved, in evaluating this legislation and working behind the scenes, as they've all indicated, to assist. But there was so much done in the dark on this legislation. And many employees, many voters in Georgia did not really understand the extent to which these suppression rules were being passed. And so I just ask, you know, could there have been more done? Could they help educate their employees, their constituents, their consumers about what was taking place? And I do think that, you know, now we're hearing that more could have been done. And really our piece was about challenging other businesses, other corporate executives to look at what's taking place in the 42 other states where legislation is pending and speak out now. Be visible and vocal on this issue before the bill's passed.
Mike Barnicle.
Jeffrey, one of the most important things about the ability to vote for everyone, no matter what economic ladder you're climbing or where you are on that ladder, and one of the most important aspects is access to voting. Could you talk about the restrictions placed in Georgia on the access to voting by this bill and the fact that polling places have been reduced and are very difficult to get to? It's sometimes a long bus ride to get to a voting booth now.
Mike, that's a really critical issue. And while Governor Kemp is waving around a few elements that are positive, they are codification of things that were just unclear before about the ability to have polling workers cross counties, for example, in work they're doing, or allowing the weekend, more formalizing weekend voting rights. However, the reduction in polling places is an obscenity. To have black voters wait 9 times as long as white voters, as Ken Fraser mentioned yesterday when he and Ken Chenault were on talking about the implications here of this new legislation, that already before this change we have this great discrepancy. But in the last 20 years, we've had 2 million more voters go into Georgia. Half of them are in Fulton DeKalb County. And half of them are black voters, is what we see in those urban counties. DeKalb and Fulton County or the metropolitan Atlanta area is they've put in these procedures that are basically having one drop box per 100,000 people, which is going from about 40 drop boxes to fewer than 9, 8 or 9, and it's some pretty long distances to travel for people with or without transportation ease. So this inaccessibility is a huge problem. I think a lot of the attention, as you know, Mike, has gone to the ridiculously cruel, bizarre provisions that you can't give water to somebody standing in a 9-hour line in sweltering heat. That's just crazy. But there are so many other things that have to do with the absentee balloting and that's been restricted, and the no excuse and to not have automatic registration when you register for your car and things like that. There are so many other elements. Perhaps the greatest one, though, that troubles me, and I think many people in Georgia the most, is that this wily GOP-controlled legislature can overrule and control election officials so they can decide whose ballots count and whose don't count. That's unbelievably undemocratic and un-American.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.